Welcome back. I am Sophia Worrell, and we are almost at the end of our 30-day journey. Today, I want to circle back and complete the issue of slavery and racism. And I want to talk about what is plaguing us as people of African descent on this day 24 by talking about the Jews. I want to hover back to slavery again. Now that we have dealt with a lot of the misconceptions and have been given solutions for how we can rectify our current situations, I am doing this to hold the slavery of blacks against the injustices of Jews side by side so that I can nail home how annoying it is when people of African descent talk and act so weakly instead of getting up and improving their own deplorable conditions. I am circling back to where I started to drive home the point of this course, and that is nowhere in neither nation or country, island, nor community where there are a majority of people of African descent who are living there are anyone standing out in any significant way that is of benefit where others can mirror their accomplishments. What we see exhibited in these places are abject poverty, illiteracy, crime, violence, abuse, sexual transmitted diseases due to illicit sexual activities, deplorable living conditions, homelessness, alcohol abuse, rampant drug abuse. You get the point. Many places in the United States and in Africa are not safe for people to travel or to live, and children suffer as a result. It is unacceptable. We, the people of African descent, have to bring those numbers down from 90% of black people who are living in slums, ghettos, public housing, and poverty, and are causing the other 10% of percentile who are working hard and are being classified with this kind of reckless behavior. This course is about changing those numbers and giving a more positive look for us as people of African descent. Last night, and for the last couple of days, the deplorable behavior of black men shone the light on the need to arrest this kind of ignorance and hold them accountable. I am doing this as people in the media, and in church and political arenas are terrified to do so. The images of people looting and killing is no longer acts that we must align with, and we as African descendants must disassociate ourselves from other people of African descent who do not have a clear message of peace and wanted to live in clean environments and work in a civil society. The playing field in every country of the world is level, and we of African descent have to learn how to truly build back our lives. So here's how. Those in the Jewish community has been targeted through time and eternity, from biblical times and through history. But today, their communities are one of the richest and their children the most educated. They are family oriented and a model for the world as a group of people that should have stayed down. But rather, the opposite has happened, and I will highlight it here today. They kept rising and building back better and stronger each time they were enslaved or mistreated. From the enslavement in Egypt and eventual exodus to the Holocaust in Germany, the Jews have been treated unfairly, and I am putting it mildly. So let's look at what happened to the Jews. We have heard of Auschwitz, located in Poland, which had the Nazi concentration and death camps. It was initially a detention center for political prisoners, but later evolved into a network of camps where Jewish people and other perceived enemies of the Nazi state were exterminated, often in gas chambers or used as slave labor. Some prisoners were also subjected to barbaric medical experiments. During World War II, between 1939 and 1945, more than 1 million people, by some accounts, lost their lives in Auschwitz. All of this started with the infamous Adolf Hitler, who was the Chancellor of Germany. During World War II, he implemented a policy that came to be known as the final solution. Hitler was determined to isolate Jews in Germany and countries seized by the Nazis by subjecting them to dehumanizing regulations and random acts of violence, all because he was convinced that his Jewish problem would be solved only with the elimination of every Jew in his domain, along with communists, homosexuals, the mental and physical handicap. It also housed a group of bathhouses where countless people were gassed to death and people were burned in ovens. More than 40 smaller facilities called subcamps served as slave labor camps. When these Jews were sent to these camps, upon arriving, these detainees were examined by Nazi doctors. Those considered unfit for work, including young children, the elderly, pregnant women, and the infirm, were immediately ordered to take showers. However, the bathhouses to which they marched were disguised gas chambers. Once inside, the prisoners were exposed to a poisonous gas. Individuals marked unfit for work were never officially registered as Auschwitz inmates. For this reason, it is impossible to calculate the number of lives lost in the camp. For those prisoners who initially escaped those gas chambers, an undetermined number died from overwork, disease, insufficient nutrition, or the daily struggle for survival in brutal living conditions. Arbitrary executions, torture, and retribution happened daily in front of the other prisoners. Some Auschwitz prisoners were subjected to medical experimentation. The chief culprit of the barbaric research was Joseph Mengele, a German physician who began working in Auschwitz in 1943. Mengele was called the Angel of Death because he performed a range of experiments on prisoners. For example, in an effort to study eye color, he injected serum into the eyeballs of dozens of children, causing them excruciating pain. He also injected chloroform into the hearts of twins to determine if both siblings would die at the same time and in the same way. In 1944, as it came close to the defeat of the Nazi Germany by the Allied forces, the Auschwitz commanders began destroying evidence of the horror that had taken place there. Buildings were torn down, blown up, or set on fire, and records were destroyed. In January 1945, as the Soviet army entered the compound, the Germans ordered that Auschwitz be abandoned. Before the end of the month, in what came to be known as the Auschwitz Death Marches, an estimated 60,000 detainees, accompanied by Nazi guards, departed the camp and were forced to march to the Polish towns some 30 miles away. Countless prisoners died during the process. Those who made it to the sites were sent on trains to concentration camps in Germany. When the Soviet army entered Auschwitz in January 27, they found approximately 7,600 sick, or withered detainees who had been left behind barbed wires. The liberators also discovered mounds of corpses, hundreds of thousands of pieces of clothing and pairs of shoes, and 7 tons of human hair that had been shaved from detainees before their liquidation. According to some estimates, between 1.1 million to 1.5 million people, the vast majority of them Jews, died at Auschwitz during its years of operation, as well as a smaller number of Soviet prisoners of war and other individuals. Why did this take place? Why did this horror take place? The anti-Semitic Nazi leader Adolf Hitler believed that Jews were an inferior race and an alien threat to Germany's racial purity and community. He hated all Jewish people, and when he began to rule, came up with a plan to get rid of all of them. His guise of the war was a cover to carry out his evil plans of destruction and what was termed as Hitler's final solution, now known as the Holocaust. If anyone of African descent ever cried racist, then Adolf Hitler was the father of racism because he wanted a pure race of people. This blatant scourge in history is hardly talked about. Why? It's not mentioned by the Jewish people because they have picked up the pieces of their lives and moved on. It is something that was done to them by evil, crazy people. It was done by an evil man that is now dead. And his followers, they are also now dead. It did not determine who they were or were not. The acts revealed that this man was a cold-hearted person, and those who obeyed his wishes were just as evil. There's a distinct comparison to the way the Jews were treated and the way in which people of African descent were treated. But the stark difference is that people of African descent will not let go of what has happened to them, even though their own offenders are long gone and every law is in place so that those kind of acts can never happen again. It does not serve us to keep hashing and rehashing a problem that has been rectified. Slavery happened and is ended. The election for 2 terms of President Barack Obama nailed that coffin of oppression shut. No one is doing anything to us because we are black. No one has the time to target us, and no one is trying to keep us down. People have their own problems, and if there's anything that bothers people of other races is them wondering, when will we ever get up and work just like them to maintain ourselves? The laws protect every one of us, and we can no longer give a free pass to those who break the law. All of us are expected to get up and work and contribute to society, and we cannot expect the world to carry our weight and theirs any longer. The crisis is taking a toll on everyone, and as people of African descent, we have to put pressure on our males to complete school as other males are and be real men who become family men and become role models for children that they bring the world as all other men are. If we claim to be adults, we have to start living like adults and face why we are angry and then do something positive about it. There's a world of information out there, and we all know what we have to do now. If we didn't have a clue, this course has given you all the framework. Now let's channel our energies into building our lives and our country as we know we can. And in the words of the same Barack Obama, yes, we can. So let us get out there and make ourselves and our children proud and stop being pathetic people that we are presenting to the world at this time. Because there are many of us of African descent that are now being stereotyped with those who act barbaric and unintelligent. They thug-like behavior is not what we want presented and represented of our culture anymore. This is not God's way. This is not the American way. And it is time to build a culture that is peaceful, loving, and kind. Thank you.